Good evening, everyone. Welcome once again after a 1-week summer break, if you will. We're glad that you're rejoining us for Garden Hour, our weekly program brought to you by SDSU Extension and our horticulture team to provide timely updates and answers to your garden questions. As always, feel free to ask your questions for any of tonight's speakers throughout our program, and you can drop those in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And without further ado, I'm excited to introduce tonight's panelists. So my name is Kristine Lang. I'm an assistant professor and SDSU Extension Consumer Horticulture Specialist. And joining me this evening is Dr. Rhoda Burrows, professor and SDSU Extension Horticulture Specialist. Rhoda, what are we going to be learning about from you tonight?
I've got a sort of smorgasbord of garden problems, so a little bit of this and that.
Well, that sounds fun and potentially delicious. And we're excited for the first time this season and making a return to Garden Hour from last year to welcome Aimee Ladonski as our invited panelist and guest tonight. Aimee is an SDSU Extension Volunteer Development Field Specialist and serves as our State Master Gardener Coordinator. Aimee, what can we look forward to from you?
I'll be sharing a little bit about our Master Gardener programming and all the things that our Master Gardener course entails for those that might be interested in joining us.
Excellent. We're glad that you're here with us tonight. And finally, Dr. John Ball is a professor and SDSU Extension Forestry Specialist and the South Dakota Department of Agriculture Forest Health Specialist. John, what are we going to hear about from you tonight?
Well, tonight I'm going to cover the stuff I promised 2 weeks ago. We're going to go a little bit on what to do about harvesting walnuts and a little bit about all the heat we've been having.
Excellent. I look forward to both of those. And I guess somewhere in there, I'm going to sneak in some birds and some babies and some beautiful blooms. So I was trying to see how many things I could get that start with B. Without further ado, Rhoda, I'll let you take it away.
Helps to unmute. So I was going to start with some samples we've been getting. And this includes blackcrot. And are my screens correct?
They look great.
Okay. I was having issues with my monitors. Blackcrot is a fairly common grape problem on some of our grape varieties. Some of them are quite resistant, but others are quite susceptible. And blackcrot is characterized by these spots on the leaves that have dark margins. And that's kind of a giveaway when you see those relatively small spots with the dark margins. The other giveaway is that as the fruit is infected, it shrivels up and stays on the cluster. It doesn't fall off. So those two clues will give you the answer that you've got blackcrot on your grapes. These, of course, just kind of rot, so they're not edible. But what's left on the cluster is fine to eat if you want to pick those apart. We do have a article on that on our extension website. If you just go into the extension website and search on blackcrot, it should pop up. So what do you do about it? And here's another photo of a close-up of just how much they just shrink up, and they will stay over the winter. Has these little black balls on the cluster. The first thing you want to do is remove the infected fruit. You can do that at any time during the summer, excuse me, up to the end of the winter pruning. So you can remove them now and go back. You may not see them all until the leaves are off the vine, so you may have to remove some more then. Take them out of the vineyard because that's where the spores, some of the spores will overwinter. The other place spores will overwinter is on infected canes, and this is kind of what it looks like during the dormant season. So watch for those kinds of lesions, and you see the tiny little black spores or spore cases there, the little dots on the stem. And so if you see some of those, if you can, prune them out. Infected tendrils will also have that same sort of appearance. If you're having trouble with it year after year, you might want to get some myclobutanol, which is one of the most effective fungicides for it. Captain won't do a whole lot for it. And you need to spray when shoots are just beginning to expand. And then every 2 weeks, you can stop when the grapes are at verizon. When is verizon? Well, it's when the grapes are basically full size and they're starting to soften and starting to get color. After that, the grape is no longer susceptible to the infection. So you don't need to spray after that point. Another question that comes up routinely is removing leaves on tomato plants. We often talk about removing some of the lower leaves if they get infected with septoria or one of our early blights, because those leaves are closest to the soil, so soil splash can send up spores to those lower leaves. So once they're infected, you can remove them. A couple of things to point out about this diagram. The lowest flower cluster, so look at the lowest flower or fruit cluster in your plant. You go down to the next main stem or leaf petiole there. You want to leave this cluster. These 2 leaves are actually helping to feed this flower here. Once you get below that, you could remove the leaf or leave it, depending on whether it's infected or not. If it's not infected, I would leave it because it's going to help the health of the plant. You start getting below that though, and again, you want to remove any suckers from here or from here or down lower. You can leave the leaves, like I said, unless they're infected, or if you're really not getting good air movement through the bottom of the plant, you could take off some of those lower leaves, but you don't have to. If they're healthy, don't worry about it. It's helping feed the whole plant and also helping feed the microbes that are going to be associated with the roots of this plant that help keep it healthy as well. Another one that came up in this past couple of weeks is bacterial wilt of cucurbits. Now, generally I see it on cucumbers, not on squash, as is shown here. The squash just doesn't get it as often, squash or pumpkins, but it can happen. And this one we actually had to send into the plant disease clinic to verify that it was bacterial and not something like fusarium. The whole plant just went down very quickly, didn't even really have time to turn all that yellow on the leaves. It was good one day. Within a couple of days, the whole plant was just collapsed. And that's kind of typical for bacterial wilt. It's a bacteria that gets in basically the water system of the plant, the plumbing system, and clogs it up. And that's why the plant collapses very quickly. In this case, if I see something collapse very quickly, the first thing that I'm going to look for is vine borer. And that we do see on winter squash and pumpkin a lot, and even zucchini. So the first thing I did when I saw these plants was look for vine borer. There was no sign of anything boring into the stem. We lifted up some of these plants and there were no holes in the middle of the stem at the crown level. No evidence of vine borers. So if you have a sudden collapse of the plant and you don't see vine borers, you could be dealing with this particular wilt. There's another disease this is carried by cucumber beetles. There's another disease that's usually carried by squash bugs, and that will make the leaves turn bright yellow before they collapse. So just some various problems that hopefully you will never see this in your garden. And then finally, what to plant now? We can still plant some things if you've been really slow getting out there, or you've pulled up your early peas now and want to plant something else. You can still plant onions from sets if you happen to still have some sets around. You can plant radishes, of course. They'll go up to almost the very last thing that we plant. And any of the salad crops, pretty much, not head lettuce, but leaf lettuce, the salad greens, all the ones that like spinach and some of the cole greens all can take some cold, and so they'll flourish as the days get cooler. We may have a little bit of an issue before that happens. If you do have trouble getting lettuce to germinate right now, because some varieties don't like to germinate in hot soil, you may want to start them out as transplants and then transplant them out. And kohlrabi is the other one I don't have a photo of, but also can mature because it will grow in cooler temperatures. And I don't see any questions, so I will turn it over to whoever's next.
All right. Thank you so much, Rhoda. And if folks think of questions for Rhoda, feel free to drop those in the Q&A, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the session and can always come back to those questions as well. So next up, it's my pleasure to introduce Aimee Ladonski to speak on behalf of the South Dakota Master Gardener Program.
Thank you so much, Kristine. Appreciate it. Bear with me a moment while I get the correct screen that I'm sharing. I know that this audience is used to that here tonight. Are you seeing the correct screen, Kristine?
That looks great.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much. Well, it's my pleasure to be here tonight to speak with you. I know many of you in the audience today are in fact Master Gardeners, so we'll have a few fun photos that we'll share here tonight about Master Gardener projects generally. I hope you'll forgive me if your photo doesn't make it to the session this evening. But really wanted an opportunity to talk about the Master Gardener Program, what its mission is, why do we invest in the Master Gardener Program, and why do we love our Master Gardeners so much? But I thought it would be prudent to share a little bit of history, just a quick history about the Master Gardener Program broadly, how it got started. In the early 1970s at Washington State University Extension, in response to increased public demand for gardening information, there was a program that started in urban horticulture. And initially, Dr. David Gibby out of Washington State University Extension, who was an agent at that time, he delivered research-based gardening information via mass media, radio broadcasts, and newspaper articles. And what that did was it really increased demand for information. So the general public was constantly calling him. I know that my colleagues who are on Garden Hour this evening are no stranger to that. Their inboxes, I'm sure, are always full. Dr. Ball, Dr. Burrows, Dr. Lang, Dr. Bachman are constantly getting questions. So we now have a coalition of master gardeners in the state of South Dakota, thanks to the history that was started in the 1970s. So Dr. Gibby and his colleague Bill Shear decided, you know what, we need some help. We think that we're going to try to train a coalition of volunteers to help us answer some of the public's questions. And that really was the beginning of the Master Gardener Program. The idea of engaging volunteers was initially met with skepticism at the university at that time, but in 1973, for their first Master Gardener training class, they had over 200 participants. It was an immediate success. And since that time, the program has, of course, expanded and endured The Master Gardener program now exists in all 50 states, 9 Canadian provinces, and South Korea. So we are delighted that we are among this awesome coalition of volunteers who are out there every day expanding horticulture knowledge in our communities. The first SDSU Extension Master Gardener class occurred in the mid-1980s, and annual Master Gardener trainings have been held nearly every year since that time. Our SDSU Extension state staff provides the training, and we have most of our trainers who are joining us on Garden Hour tonight. Dr. Lang, Dr. Ball, Dr. Burrows, Dr. Bachman is also one of our trainers, and Dr. Clark on main campus as well. We are so fortunate to have their expertise every year. They share their knowledge to train our Master Gardeners and to provide continuing education. So we host that training annually. I'll tell you a little bit more about the training in a moment, but first I'll just share that we have over 400 Master Gardeners currently enrolled across the state and 16 Master Gardener clubs that exist in the state today. Our Master Gardener clubs are mostly volunteer-led. They have typically an elected structure of volunteers who direct their own projects. Some folks, when they apply to the training for the Master Gardener program, they think, oh, I'm going to advance my horticulture knowledge. And that's true, but being a Master Gardener is really so much more than just enhancing your horticulture knowledge. It really is about that volunteerism piece and sharing that horticulture knowledge with others. So our goal is to provide current research-based consumer horticulture information and education to the citizens of South Dakota through Master Gardener volunteer projects and services. And individuals that sign up for the Master Gardener training, they have two options. One is to participate as a Master Gardener volunteer. The other is to participate and just receive a home horticulture certificate and not do the volunteer portion. But we're always really hopeful that folks will want to be a volunteer with us. So if you become a Master Gardener with us, you really have then completed an in-depth Master Gardener course. You make a written commitment to give back 40 hours of service to your community. You become a recognized, trained professional who represents SDSU Extension, and you on a regular basis provide that research-based gardening information to communities. We have a number of different ways that our Master Gardeners are providing their services each day. A lot of our Master Gardener clubs are involved in spring educational events. And when I say involved, it's really so much more than that. They are hosting big spring educational events. Our medium-sized communities have great participation, small communities, great participation. Our communities with larger participation see upwards of 200 individuals at each of their educational sessions. We also have Master Gardener clubs that are hosting plant sales and plant swaps and garden tours. They're providing youth presentations to boys and girls clubs. They're participating at schools. It really runs the gamut on how our Master Gardeners are getting involved in communities. We even had a Master Gardener club that had a plant sale this year, and over 1,000 people showed up to participate. And so the funding from those sales then goes directly back into education projects and or horticulture scholarships for the community. So we really are able to exponentially expand our reach on horticulture education in the community, thanks to the good work of our Master Gardener volunteers. We categorize our Master Gardener volunteer work and we ask them to essentially do a short timesheet for us so we can keep track of their impact and report that impact out. And you see the three main categories of service here on your screen. Educational outreach obviously is priority number one. That comes in the form of, as I mentioned before, teaching in schools, school gardens, providing demonstrations, hosting events, providing education at a community garden site, for example. But then there's a lot of work to be done in the community as well. And while we try to steer clear of solely being asked to do labor projects, there are very important community beautification projects, community assessment and inventory projects, and those are considered service projects in our community. And then of course, to stand up all of these events that Master Gardeners are hosting, it takes a great deal of coordination and a great deal of planning on the part of our committees and our Master Gardener leaders. So we have them log those hours as support activities. We're very fortunate to have many different skill sets in our Master Gardener community to help bring these items to fruition. So I just wanted to provide a few more snapshots here of some activities that have happened this year. So you see our Aberdeen Prairie Partner Master Gardeners giving a talk, our Minnehaha County Master Gardeners hosting table talks, our Dakota Prairie Master Gardeners in their Shakespeare Garden, our Pennington County Master Gardeners at their Spring Fever education event. Down in the bottom right-hand corner, you can see it was a packed house. We'd love to invite you, if you're not already a Master Gardener with us, to participate in our Master Gardener training. I'll share some contact information at the end of this presentation on how you can get involved. The training is hosted once each year. It's a 10-week course. It's a hybrid course, both online and in person, mostly online with a minimum of 2 in-person sessions. As part of that course, you'll receive a curriculum manual, authored again by many of my colleagues who are on the line here today. Beautiful, beautiful manual that you'll lean into for your readings. Live virtual sessions that we would invite you to, those minimum 2 in-person sessions, and optional online practice quizzes. So they're optional, but it's a great way to test your knowledge. Then we ask our Master Gardener training participants to pass a test at the end of the course. It's open book, so not to panic for those of you with test anxiety. But it is important to us that those of you who are participating in the Master Gardener training, we're paying attention and we're sharing that good vetted research-based information out into the community. Down on the bottom of the slide here, you can see a list of the topics that are covered during Master Gardener training: botany, plant nomenclature, taxonomy, soil health, vegetables, small fruits, tree fruits, plant propagation, introduction to lawn care, woody landscape plants, and so many more. It's just a wonderful, wonderful experience. If it's something you've been considering for some time, please feel free to reach out to us, and we'd love to tell you more about it. There are some benefits to being a Master Gardener. We don't just ask our Master Gardeners to pour out their heart and soul, although they do. We are trying each year to enhance our programming to provide more opportunities for our Master Gardeners. So this year we really ramped up our continuing education opportunities that are available special for our Master Gardener community. So we're hosting a Lunch and Learn series for our Master Gardeners this summer for them to advance their continuing education. Special for our Master Gardeners, our North Dakota State University and South Dakota State University Master Gardeners, we are hosting, actually it's underway now, a virtual conference. And then annually we get together in September, typically the 3rd week in September, for an annual in-person conference. And wow, is that a lot of fun. We have silent auctions. Occasionally we have live auctions. It's an opportunity to gather with friends that you haven't seen all year, like-minded friends from across the state. It's an opportunity to display art and have contests and provide awards to one another and just celebrate the good work that's being done. So if you're interested in learning more about the Master Gardener program, we would love to hear from you. At the bottom of the screen there, you can see that there's an sdsu.sdmg@sdstate email account. That's the best account. There are a couple of us that are monitoring that account. Please reach out to us and we would be happy to place you on an interest list, and you would be the first to know about the Master Gardener training registration going live in the spring of next year. We also really try to keep up with all the events that are happening that our Master Gardeners are hosting across the state and post those on our Facebook page. So you can find us, we're SD Extension Master Gardeners on Facebook. So look us up on Facebook. We'll share out information about all the happenings that are happening with our Master Gardeners, the events, and then also posting when training is available as well. I'm happy to entertain any questions at this time, Dr. Lang.
Wonderful. Thank you, Aimee. If anyone has questions about the Master Gardener program or events or any clarifications, feel free to drop that in the Q&A. Aimee, I'm gonna pitch a question your way. I know we have State Fair coming up over Labor Day weekend for the state of South Dakota. where might I find master gardeners there all weekend?
Oh, that's a great question. There's a horticulture building there on the State Fair property. So we are just inside one of the main entrances in the horticulture building. So look us up. If you have gardening questions, you can show up at State Fair with those. We'll have at least 2 master gardeners on hand to answer your question. And if they can't answer your question that day, they can point you to resources that can help answer your question.
Excellent. That's a shameless plug. And I should add that many of your Garden Hour panelists and hopefully we're all your favorite, right? But many of us will be giving presentations throughout the State Fair in the horticulture building. So do keep an eye out for that full schedule. And I hope to have an advertisement link next time you see me on Garden Hour. So stay tuned, but it's a great spot to look for your Garden Hour team as well as the master gardeners. All right, well, thank you so much, Aimee. And Rhoda, I'm gonna ask you to hop back on with us for just a second while I'm pulling up my screen so that you can answer that vegetable question that came in.
Yes, there was a question of, I'd like to plant peas in Mitchell, a 60-day variety. When should I plant them? I would plant them within the week. You'll have August and September if we have a late frost. Peas are fairly frost tolerant, but the blossoms are not. So you need to get those in probably as quickly as you can. One of the things that we have to remember with fall planting is that as the days get cooler, the plants grow slower. And so 60 days in the spring might be a very different 60 days in the fall. So depending on our year, I've seen frost in mid-August and I've seen the first frost in October. So keep your fingers crossed, and especially if you have some sort of row cover, you should be fine.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rhoda. That was the perfect transition. Meanwhile, that gave people more time to stare at a tasty salad. So I'm next up, and it's already been a month since I talked about edible flowers, for those of you who would have joined us at the end of June. And I realized I never shared an update on how our salad turned out and tasted. So I just wanted to share that, again, the edible flowers in this salad, it was plain Jane iceberg lettuce. That was the most disappointing part of the salad. But the edible flowers we used were those peppery, zippy nasturtium that continue to get more zippy and more peppery as summer wears on. They're almost getting too spicy for my liking now. We had the pansy flowers that were just kind of tangy, sweet, not, I would say, more mild. And then those cucumber flavored borage flowers were all part of the salad. So just a reminder on edible flowers, if you have any of these things growing in your garden, you might want to incorporate them into your next salad if you'd like. So next, I'd love to, there we go, share a question that came in to Rhoda and I, and it sounds like this might be a question that other gardeners are facing across the state. So the question was, what's wrong with my squash blossoms? And we received the photo on the left. And for comparison, I've got a healthy plant photo on the right that I've taken from a previous garden planting. And so the question was, why are my flowers dropping? Why am I not getting any fruit? What on earth is going on? And I want to call out an awesome extension resource from our friends at Penn State that talks about pollination and cucurbits, specifically in pumpkins in this case. But there's a couple of really important things to know about cucurbits. One thing to know is that they actually have unique male and female flowers on the same plant. And circled in black on both of these photos are examples of the male flower. And so that's going to be the pollen source that needs to be carried by your bees or other pollinators to the female flower, which in both of these photos is circled in purple. And if you go out into your garden tonight, or if you're listening on your phone and go out into your garden right now and take a peek at your cucurbits, Again, it can be really, those female flowers are really obvious because you'll see that swollen ovary at the base of the base of the flower. You know, it might look a lot smaller than the circle on the right. It might look a lot more like the circle on the left where you just have that very small ovary, immature ovary. And again, that female flower is waiting for that transfer of pollen. And without successful pollination, those immature fruits won't become fruit because they haven't received that pollen yet. So I've seen this on my own summer squash in my garden this summer, that I've been having poor transfer of pollen. So many of those female flowers have just been dropping, and the unpollinated fruit has been just shriveling up and falling off the plant, essentially aborting. This summer, we had those extended periods of hot weather. So if we have nighttime temperatures over 70 degrees or lots of days where temperatures are being sustained over 90 degrees, those are two different stressors that can cause blooms to drop and lead to poor bloom set, which reduces the likelihood of pollination. If cucurbits sit in flooded soils too long, that can also negatively impact flower set and pollination. Also under hot, extreme hot conditions, we see some cucurbits will actually produce even more male flowers than female flowers, so the ratio is off. And these are on our cucurbits, the flowers aren't open for very long. So typically you'll notice that they open for a day and then they close up, they shrivel up and drop off. And if that fruit was successfully pollinated, it'll continue to mature into your pumpkin or your squash or what have you. And if it didn't pollinate and that flower drops off, then you'll see, like the photo on the left, you'll see that entire fruit will drop off as well. Now, I'm not concerned in the photo on the left where you see the male flowers have shriveled up. That could have just been a result of the pollen had already been transferred and it was their time to shrivel up and drop off the plant. But again, there are a lot of different reasons that pollination could be poor, especially given the hot, sustained hot temperatures we had in the previous weeks. So just something to keep an eye on. Also, for those of you gardeners, even with more male flowers than female flowers, so the timing might be a little off. If you have multiple plants in your garden, you know, multiple acorn squash or multiple pumpkin, there is greater chance for pollination. And it's important to remember that your cucumber and your acorn squash aren't going to cross-pollinate because they are different species. So you only have cross-pollination within the same species. So just a note on squash blossoms. All right, as promised, we were going to have blooms, birds, and babies, and this hits on two of those. So keeping with the theme of gorgeous blooms, many of you probably have the same wonderful event in your gardens right now. It's the end of July. We're at peak bloom for a lot of our annual and perennial plants. And as we see cut flower farms developing across the state, they're starting to be in full production and there's more on-farm events. So it's just a really great time to be out in the garden in South Dakota for so many of us this year. And recently I had my niece staying with me and she too is ready to be an aspiring gardener. And we brought her out to enjoy our balcony gardening one afternoon. And one thing I noticed is that she was absolutely fascinated by the tassel flower, which is the plant that's shown here. And tassel flower is one that I want to right now start with a note of caution. It can be considered a weed in some gardens, and that's because it reseeds readily. So I'm going to start there and then follow up with this was a variety that I got from a seed saving company. So this is one that's still kind of cultivated or kept in production. I have no doubts that I might have some of it volunteering in my raised bed next year. Some things that I liked about this plant is it really does have nice, long, elegant, airy stems. It doesn't have a lot of foliage. I would say there's kind of a rosette of long, slender leaves at the base of the plant, and you'll have a few along the stem. But really what stands out about this flower is that bright red flower head. And it really does have that nice, soft, fuzzy appearance. You can see in the photo, the lower right-hand corner that the petals are going to start to drop. And letting this go to seed, you essentially end up with what looks like dandelion heads. Tassel flowers in the Asteraceae family, same as dandelion. So you get those fuzzy structures that are called pappuses, and that's what catches that wind and allows it, when you blow on it and goes poof and disperses all over into your neighbor's garden. And about 2 feet of height, and again, fine, wispy, airy plants. These were started as transplants in April, the first week of April, which was maybe a little late, but they were transplanted out then around May 7th. We couldn't remember the exact date, but it was around May 7th, and are looking absolutely gorgeous right now. This is one that I am trying to keep deadheaded because I don't want to have all of those fuzzy seed heads blowing around the garden, and might irritate the property managers. Doing some research, this is one that they say can also be, picked kind of at this stage when those flowers still have that red color, and hung upside down and dried and used in dried arrangements as well. But if you're looking for a wispy plant that blows well in the wind and adds a little bit of a whimsical feel to your garden, that might be an annual to consider. All right, so I've got a lot of reds and yellows. I know one of my last talks, I had a lot of purple flowers, so we went with a bright cherry theme tonight. So 2 of the flowers featured in the left-hand photo, Radio is the orange flower that has the bumblebee sitting right in the middle of it quite happily, or some form of bee. And then we have the touch of red buff, which is the red to cream colored calendula. So calendula are actually known as an herb. I often see them sold and used as just an annual plant, and wasn't really aware that this was one that folks would consume. They have nice soft leaves, very hairy pubescence. They have the nice daisy-like flower that sits up tall on the seed or on the flower stalks. And this is one that I've seen a lot of different butterflies and insects visiting throughout the season. And I deadhead these plants basically every morning, and it's continuing to produce flowers. And I anticipate that it's going to do so well until we hit frost. And again, same thing, this was grown as transplants, started in April, and then transplanted out the first part of May, and is really in full bloom and just hopping in the garden. I hadn't tasted these yet, so I did message home for my chief taste tester, which many of you know by now, I often lean on my husband to weigh in on Garden Hour. And he did let me know ahead of time that he tasted the flowers, and they tasted sweet with a bitter aftertaste. You can also consume the leaves, but they were noted for having somewhat of a bitter taste as well. So I wouldn't make a standalone calendula salad, but maybe incorporate a few leaves here and there. So another gorgeous bloom, and just a good reminder for your annual and perennial gardens in general, that you should be deadheading those plants to continue bloom production so that you are continuing to enjoy those annuals, and even some of your perennials. Examples, Veronica, some of your Coreopsis are 2 nice examples of plants. A lot of your Shasta daisies, so your leucanthemums, if you're deadheading those blooms that are starting to go downhill, in many cases, you're going to have an additional flush of blooms on those perennials as well that you can enjoy in your garden. And last but not least, in my garden, it's already sunflower season. I know in many parts of the state, our sunflowers are not yet in bloom. I've seen some nice fields in a few spots that are green and healthy, but are not producing flowers yet. This particular variety is called Irish Eyes. It's an open pollinated sunflower. And there are a few things that are unique about this plant. It gets a maximum of 3 feet tall in height versus 6 feet. Again, there is a time and a place for a 6 to 7 foot sunflower. My raised bed on my balcony is not that place, so we selected this plant because of its short stature. And the other wonderful thing, and the reason I have bloomed so early, is this is a 60-day sunflower. Many of the other sunflower options I was looking for this particular seed provider were 75 to 90 days. So looking at, maybe a month from now, you could expect blooms. And again, that's always influenced by temperature and the growing degree days that Dr. Ball talks about as well. But if you're looking for an early sunflower and one that does well in a raised bed or a smaller location without completely taking over the garden, this might be a really nice option. And you can see in the photo on the right that sunflowers are exhibiting their classic phototrophism. So they do track with the sun, and that's why you'll see those sunflower fields, they'll kind of bend or track. And my garden does face the south. And so there is a point at the end of the day where the sun is starting to set on the other side of that wall towards the west, and they run out of sunlight, but they definitely catch it in the early morning hours, or the early part of the day, and then turn with it. And so there is a connection with these sunflowers. I have another bird story. This time it's goldfinches. Now, many of us have probably observed, for better or for worse, on sunflowers that goldfinches and blackbirds and other birds are really interested in the seeds. So if you're someone who's growing sunflowers either to save for seeds to plant out in your garden next year, or you want to save those seeds to roast and consume at the next baseball game, if you're looking to accomplish those things, I do recommend that you bag those sunflower heads so that you don't have birds eating all of your sunflowers. And that's achievable in a small scale garden setting. For acres and acres of sunflowers, they're dealing with other bird management strategies, but on a small scale, that's possible. What was surprising about this goldfinch is it landed on the flowers and we thought, oh, it's just scoping it out for later. But we watched this bird for several minutes, and photo credits here go to my husband, and we noticed that it was feeding. And after it flew away, we took a closer look. And if you look at that photo on the right, you'll notice that this goldfinch, it looked like perhaps it was trying to get at the immature seeds, which at that point are still essentially ovaries that are developing into the hard seeds that we would think of. But they also in the process pulled out all of the disc flowers from this section of the sunflower. And in many cases, the ovary was left behind. So we deduced that it seems to actually be eating those disc flowers. And another botanical note with plants in the sunflower family is these are all of these flowers in the middle are individual disc flowers. And then those outside petals are actually the ray flowers. So just a note on that. And that's why you have all of those seeds that develop within that flower head. So I'll have to keep you posted on what my next interesting bird story is from the garden. All right, as we're wrapping up, I just want to call out if you're thinking about adding plants to your garden this fall as we have this breath of cool air. I'm guessing temperatures are going to heat up again in August, but as we head towards the end of August into early September, that's a great time to add new perennials into your garden. You want to give yourself 6 to 8 weeks ahead of any anticipated frost date for those perennials to root in and establish so they overwinter successfully. But we recently worked on a new article with some more shade-loving perennial suggestions. And this is a complement to a prior article by Dr. Graper that had a lot of really fun perennial shade-loving ground covers. So, and that's cross-linked in this article. So be a great time to do some garden planting for fall purposes. And we also find that many of the garden centers are running sales or promotions for 1 gallon potted perennials. So it can be a great time to shop the local garden centers as well. I just want to put out a shameless plug. If you're not already subscribed to our newsletter, we'd love to have you. And if you're interested in looking back at old articles, our EdTech team this month has now cultivated a garden and yard newsletter archive. So you'll notice that looks very similar to Dr. Ball's tree pest alert archive. So again, on our SDSU extension website, you can find Dr. Ball's tree pest alert and see all of the past issues that he's written and get week by week tree updates and woody plant information. And you can see bi-weekly newsletters for the garden and yard newsletter. And if you're looking for a road trip in the near future, we would love to see you at McCrory Gardens. Garden Party has now been expanded to a 2-day event. So if you're used to the part where you get to have ice cream and enjoy music in the garden, we'd love to see you on Friday, August 5th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m., 6:30 to 8 p.m. And then if you're looking for education and tours, they're going to be having garden tours and educational booths. There's even going to be yoga in the garden and watercolor painting led by a local artist. There are going to be a lot of fun activities at Garden Party for the Garden Party Expo on Saturday, August 6th. And that's going to run all day at McCrory Gardens. And there also will be 2 free concerts for kiddos that morning at 10:30 and 11:30. So I invite you to check out their website and also follow them on Facebook for more event details. All right. Thanks for hanging with me, everyone. And let's see what we've got for questions. All right, Rhoda, I'm going to invite you back in so that we can maybe look at these together. And if you have other pollination ideas. The first question, I'd like to beef up pollination for my cucumbers. I've tried hand pollinating. Would running a leaf blower help? How can I attract more pollinators? I kind of like that leaf blower idea. I don't know how successfully that would work.
I don't think it's necessary in South Dakota.
Yeah, that's true. You know, with attracting more pollinators, I think if you have other blooming annuals or perennials or things that you can plant in that garden, even low-cost things on an annual basis like zinnias or cosmos, other pollinators, shapes and colors. I know I've talked at length about Phacelia and borage in a prior garden hour. That would be one option. I really want to stress not spraying insecticides for the sake of spraying insecticides, because so many of our home garden insecticides are contact sprays and can really knock out pollinators, and always follow all label instructions as well. Rhoda, other ideas?
You might look next year for a cucumber that's parthenogenic, which means it doesn't need to be pollinated. So that's something to keep in mind. And if you do hand pollinate, do it in the morning. That's when they're most receptive. And you need to make sure that you've done a very generous job of it. All those little seeds in the cucumber, remember when you slice one up, each one of those is a pollen grain. So
I was gonna say, with success for my own summer squash, yeah, I've been pulling the anthers just directly out of the male flower and just rubbing it all around the female flower and actually leaving it in there. So Rhoda, I'm gonna maybe throw this one to you. Is llama poop a valuable fertilizer? What are your thoughts on that for a garden setting? I don't have any experience with it, so
I'm going to actually toss that one to John Ball because he used to have llamas.
And I've got it right in my presentation. So whenever I start, I'll put it, I added it right into it.
Okay, perfect. All right. And to wrap up before I hand the baton to John, can we plant Irish eyes now? You could. I'm not going to promise you're going to have full bloom set, because as Rhoda indicated, our days are getting shorter. They are going to start to cool off. But if you could get your hands on some seed, it would be worth a shot. And I'd love it if you report back to me how they do. I just don't want to guarantee that you're going to get big, beautiful blooms. And with that, John, I'm going to let you take it away.
All right. Let's see. And here we go. All right, everyone, welcome. And as you can see here, we've got quite a buildup of growing degree days. One of the things you might find interesting, though, is it's not accumulating quite as fast as you might think. The reason being is it doesn't account for temperatures above 86 degrees. In other words, when we start getting those 100-degree days, or as I saw 110 out west of Pierre last week, that doesn't speed up the development. In fact, if anything, temperatures that high actually detract from development. And I'll chat about that here in a little bit later. But yes, it has been warm. Llamas. Yeah, there's one of ours. Llamas, by the way, are excellent goat guards. And so that was their big function there. And obviously you could shear them as well. We used to use them for felting. But one of the things, the question was, what about llama poop? First of all, it's great fertilizer. Llamas are incredibly efficient. We could have 5 llamas in one of those small square bales, and that would last them for days. And anything that comes out of the back end of a llama doesn't have weed seeds germinate out of it. And that's the real nice thing about llama poop using it, because when you mix it in, it's not going to suddenly notice other things coming up. And that was the fertilizer for our raspberries. And I would save up the llama manure for the winter, and we'd have it all piled up there. Llamas are really nice. They're like cats. You can train them to go to one spot. So they'd use one part of the barn as their sandbox, if you will. In fact, I had it marked out that way. And I would just scoop that out. It's fairly small, hard, kind of like elk, if you're familiar with those. Not really an odor to it either, so it's not really objectionable. And then in the early spring, once I cut the raspberries back, I would put llama manure on it. And as long as we were harvesting 4 months later, and obviously the raspberries up high, there wasn't really any concern about it. It was fairly much aged. So if someone can get their hands on llama manure, absolutely utilize it. You can look it up. It's fairly high in elements. And the fact that you're not going to get a lot of weed seeds coming out of it is really an absolute plus. Get as much of it as you can. It's kind of cool stuff. Well, back to what I was going to talk about, and that is once you start getting temperatures above 86, things start going backwards, especially for woody plants. And once you start getting above 95 degrees, you really are looking at plant stresses then. And when we were out there at 108 degrees and 109 degrees out west of Pier, and for those small little trees in the windbreaks, if you held the thermometer right at the needle level, these small little seedlings on black fabric, you could fry an egg. And so we're already seeing more than just drought injury. We're seeing heat injury among the woody plants. Adding water alone isn't going to solve this. And the other question I keep getting, well, can I fertilize it? No, fertilizer is not chicken soup. It's not something we just do routinely to improve plants. All right, well, we've got only a few more minutes, so I did want to make sure I covered the question that was asked at our last episode 2 weeks ago, and that is harvesting black walnut for the nuts. Wonderful tree. We have them throughout the state. I can find them even in myrtle and even in lemon, which is kind of interesting. But here's the thing. What I want you to do right now is you probably noticed walnuts falling already. They're falling because it's a drought. If you pick up the fruit, you shouldn't be harvesting it until you can press your thumb into it. And right now, these are like marbles. They're fairly good size, but you can't push your thumb into them very well. Now, interesting enough, if you don't damage these at all, they will continue to ripen. So it's not like you have to throw them away, but do not husk them yet. Pile them up if you want, keep the squirrels away from them, put them in a cool, dry place, but you're probably at least a month or so away from actually being able to utilize the fruit. Now, typically harvest is going to begin in September. Well, you want to do it when the fruit is still green. Ideally, you're picking it from the tree, but most of our trees are too tall, and almost all of us actually just harvest the nuts from the ground, and there's no problem with that. You're just competing with the squirrels. But go ahead and grab them. Again, if some start coming a little early when in our windstorms and that, you can put them in a cool, dry place. If you leave them on the ground, they're going to turn black and rot. So you do want to collect them, but don't husk them yet. Husking is a lot of fun. The old rule was lay them all out on your driveway and drive your car back and forth over them. I think some of our food people might shudder at that, but go out, take a piece of concrete and a hammer, My recommendation is use your neighbor's driveway, because removing the husk from a ripe black walnut, you're going to find it leaves quite a stain. And I recommend wearing gloves, nitrile gloves, just so you don't get this goo all over you. And certainly make sure you're wearing old clothes that you don't mind having tie-dyed with the black from the walnuts. But right now, if you pull them open, and this is one I did a few hours ago just to show it tonight, you'll find that you are getting the shell forming, right? And you think, oh, that's great, the shell has formed. Well, at this point, once you've picked it, you've stopped any further development, and you don't want to do that. By the way, if you pull the shell out of there, you're already starting to form that black goo. And again, that's why you're going to wear the gloves, because that is just a sticky disaster that you can make a dye out of, but unfortunately you end up dyeing things you wish you didn't. But that's the nut right now inside the shell. As you can see, it is barely developed yet. So don't run out there too prematurely. Again, collect the fallen nuts so they don't rot. If you want, cool, dry place, well ventilated, but let them continue along. And if they're up on the tree, so much the better. They've got probably about another month to go. Probably early September this year. Some years it's towards late September if we've had a cool summer and that. But at that point, you should be able to find that they do have that nut inside. Now, by the way, you don't want to shell them too early. Once you collect the unshelled nut, keep it in a well-ventilated place, but out of direct sunlight. And if you do that, that unshelled nut can be stored in a cool, dry place for 6 months or more. Don't break the shell until you're ready to eat the meat out of the nut. At that point, it's something that you want to refrigerate. So, find a place you can keep them away from the squirrels, and you'll have some nice nuts for Christmas. And speaking of the holidays, I want to throw out a couple of other things out here. There's butternuts out there. And butternuts get the name because that's what they taste like. It's more of an oily nut rather than the black walnut. We do have butternuts across the state. This one's out in Rapid City. And the nuts look quite differently. Notice that they're elongated like that. Now, they do have a little stain to it. I don't find it quite as bad, but if you ever heard of the Confederacy, the soldiers referred to as butternuts, the reason for that was they dyed the uniforms from the dye that you could obtain from a butternut tree. And these are harvested the same way. I slit them open. It comes a little bit easier, but everything I've said about butternuts, walnuts fits for butternuts. And then finally, look at this. That's a pecan tree that's starting to form pecans, and it's in Rapid City, South Dakota. We got a call on this about a week and a half ago. The owner knew it was a pecan, or at least was pretty certain it was a pecan, brought it up north decades ago. And while we do have some down in Dakota Dunes area, and there's even one in Sioux Falls, it was really cool to find a pecan tree growing there. And there it is. It's actually doing fairly well and is covered with nuts. So if we keep having a warm, long summer and hopefully fall, I might sneak in that backyard and might try to harvest enough pecans that I can make a pecan pie, because that would be just great. So with that, since we are getting up to the end, I will stop sharing and I'll turn it back to you, Kristine, if there's any other questions or something you want to chat about.
Yeah, does anyone have a lingering pre-question or a question for any of us? Tonight we'd be happy to have you. And I do want to remind folks that if you have questions that come up during the week, we're happy to help answer them. One of the best ways to reach us is by contacting the SDSU Garden Hotline, and we have 3 sets of emails and phone numbers, so 3 locations, and you can call or reach out to them from any corner of South Dakota, and they'll work with you on your garden questions, and they often recruit our expert team to assist as well. So with that, if there aren't any other questions, we want to thank you for once again tuning in to Garden Hour, and a friendly reminder that our last month of Garden Hour is going to be upon us next week. So please look to tune in every evening in August, and we look forward to seeing you for our last month of Garden Hour. And with that, everyone have a great evening, and we will see you next week.